before we get started, let's get something out of the way right now. So with that out of the way, we can get into the build. Hopefully nothing breaks for the rest of the build. I only have so much window I could go through before I actually have to replace it. To give you a little background, this is some wood that I found in a house that was torn down, kind of like the last video. They just tore this house down, was throwing everything away. So I found some nice wood that I salvaged that we're going to be making an entryway table out of. And before we get started, if you like the shirt, go check out the shop. There are a lot of shirts in the shop that I think are pretty cool designs. And it is freezing cold in my shop, so I'm going to go inside while you watch the video. Let me catch my breath. That's heavy. A good bit of material I was able to get out of the piles without being caught. And I'm going to start with this, and we're going to build an entry table. I'm not sure what else to do with these beams, but I just would hate to see this go in a dumpster. These are some nice beams from an old house. I think they're hand hewn. They have saw marks on them. I have some other wood outside. I would just hate to see this go to waste. So, in case you can't tell, there is a ton of junk and crap nailed into these beams. Nailed and screwed. These are actually porcelain conductors or connectors used for the old aluminum wiring that was just wrapped around these beams. And some of these nails and screws were just an absolute pain to get out of the wood. Obviously we are not running this through the planer, so we didn't have to get everything out, but I tried to get as much out as possible. And I think I got probably, 92%, 92.3% of the nails, screws, and wire. And so these end pieces, if you can't tell, are very splintered, jagged, and broken. They took an excavator and they just started ripping this house apart without trying to save anything at all. So I just happened to see these beams on the side of the road, scattered throughout the wood pile, and I drug them out and brought them home. And there was a 16-footer beam like this that was perfect, but it was just too big for my truck, and by the time I got back with the trailer, it was already gone. And so right here what I'm doing is cutting off the splintered ends to get a good straight edge on both of the beams. I'm actually going to cut out that joint that you see there in the front. I cut that off as well, and I do save the piece. I'm going to do something with it. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to do with it, but I did save as much as possible. It's just that joint was not good for the project I was doing. You couldn't really see it off camera, but the bottom side of that joint that they had cut was splintered also. And there was really no saving it. You could probably see it right there. There was really not much saving that I could do for those old joints, as much as I wanted to. And so right here, instead of just sliding it over the table saw like any normal person would do, I pick it up and carry it and then set it on the side of the table saw like an unnormal person would do. And what I'm trying to do is get it to that miter saw to cut the other end off and cut this leg down to length, which was 36 inches. Now it's time to heft that big boy over. Huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a heavy beam. My back was hurting the next day. But that was a heavy chunk of wood. But the good part about this project is I already have 5 kids. I don't need any more. So if I hurt my back on this one, you take your wins with your losses. And I would consider that one sort of both, I guess. And obviously the saw blade was not big enough to cut through it in one fell swoop. So I do have to back it off, flip it over, and try to make that cut match. I do come back with a chisel and a handsaw and make that a flush cut. And right here, in order to cut the joints, what I did was I made a bunch of small cuts with my skill saw. And I'm going to come back with a hammer and smash the crap out of that beam to break those small cuts off. And here it is right there. And as you can see, it worked, but it was just a little bit too messy for me. It left too messy of a surface. And it took too much work to clean this up with a hammer and chisel later on. I really didn't like it, so I did come up with another way to approach it in the next cut that you'll see. And so here, cutting this joint, you'll notice I use the skill saw as much as possible. I actually cut up, down, and sideways where I needed that joint to be. I laid it out with my marking tool and traced it along with the saw. And there you go. See how it's just popping out very easy. I cut that shoulder kind of 8 inches down from the end of the board, and you can see where the chisel is just hogging out that waste. I prefer this method much more than I prefer doing it where you just cut multiple pass after pass with the skill saw. It just made way too much of a mess, and it left just a messy surface to clean up with the chisel later on. This is my preferred method going forward if I had to do it again. And as you can see, the chisel is making quick work of the waste. It's coming out a little sloppy, but you're not going to see that anyway. I did decide later on, instead of using the full width of the board to lay into the legs, I decided to cut that down to about 2 inches because I had no idea how I was going to cut out an 8-inch deep mortise into the top of those legs with the tools that I had. And also the fact that I didn't want to spend 4 weeks working on this one piece. And so here's how I cut the joinery in the legs themselves. I laid out where I needed the inlay to be. I cut along the line with the skill saw. And I did do multiple passes with this because I really saw no other way to get it done. But it did make for some quick chisel work later on, which you'll see here. I made a bunch of passes again, and I had the saw set at the exact depth that I needed, which is why it's beneficial to use a skill saw in this instance, and I just hog out the waste with the hammer and chisel. And it didn't take that long, maybe 30 minutes per leg. Just a lot of elbow grease. It made me miss my power tools. It made me miss my domino joiner. And I did wonder why multiple times I was putting myself through this. But it was still an enjoyable experience. I did learn a little bit out of it. One main thing I did learn is I'm probably not going to do this again. It sucked. I let this clip kind of long so you can see me finishing out that joint right there and cleaning it. And here we go cleaning some more. And here we go cleaning some more. Now the volume's turned all the way down on this one because that vacuum is loud. But just another instance where having that boom arm comes in handy. It makes it so much easier to clean up during a job. I don't know what it is. Not having a clean shop, it just shuts me down on a project and I have to get it clean in order to keep going. And so here I'm trying to take the leg off of the table. That's how tight of a fit that joint came out to be. It worked out pretty well. And you know, I built that hammer for a joke, that mallet, I built that as a joke, but it's been coming in handy a lot lately. I had no idea I would be using that mallet this much, but I have been using it a lot. I don't know if you could read the subtitles, but there was some kind of black coating. I don't know if it was creosote, womanizing, what it was. But I could not sand these beams at all. It kept gumming up my sandpaper as soon as I'd put it to the beam. I tried using low speed, high speed, just could not sand it, so we wound up getting a wire brush on a drill. And that is everything that's holding this table together. I did glue and joinery, no hardware. I clamped it down. I forgot to add that footage, but we've all seen a clamp. All I did was put 2 pipe clamps on it to go from end to end to tighten them legs up to the shoulder of the top. And that's it. And them joints are so tight that between the friction fit and the glue, this thing is going absolutely nowhere. And this is my first time using the Osmocoat, and I'm pretty impressed with it. This was just a very rough surface to try applying it with a rag, so I wound up taking out a roller and applying it that way. And I did have some excess to wipe off. But I do like this finish. I'm looking forward to using it on an actual clean and polished piece of furniture to see what it does. And that is it. That's the entryway table. It went from a pile of trash in a dumpster to an entry table that I'm debating whether I'm going to sell it or keep it. And I'm probably going to keep it. I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, like and subscribe. I really appreciate the support. And we have a lot of content coming out. Have a Merry Christmas, and I will catch you on the next video.